Well, hello, everyone. And we're going to get started with today's webinar on navigating American FactFinder and integrating that data into Tableau Public. If I could just take a moment and have everybody, or as many people as possible, just to send a hello to all participants using the chat. Just want to kind of get used to that for everybody. Wonderful, thank you. And if you can keep in mind that when we're doing today's presentation, if you could direct your questions to all panelists rather than just to the host, that means my colleague who will be co-presenting with me will be able to see your question. So great, well, we'll get started now. So a nice little way to kind of get the day started with our webinar on using Census Bureau data and Tableau Public. And if I could ask if everybody could use the mute button on their phone. I'm getting a lot of feedback. There we go. So this is a nice visualization to get things started. It's really just a really neat little image as we kind of set the groundwork for today's presentation. So I'm actually not with Tableau Public. My name is Ryan Dolan, and I'm a data dissemination specialist, and I specialize in data visualizations on behalf of the United States Census Bureau. My co-presenter, who's also on the line today, is Gerson Vasquez. He's in from Atlanta, and he's also a data dissemination specialist, and we work closely together on a lot of the things you see from the Census Bureau. In our role as data dissemination specialists, we work with the media, nonprofit organizations, all levels of government, state, local, tribal, and federal, as well as, the business sector as well, too. So I'm actually calling from Minneapolis, and I cover kind of the Great Plains, but I do branch out just like my colleague does, and we kind of are all around the place. Just a little bit of housekeeping. We've already taken care of this, but it's really important that you, when you have to ask a question, that you chat with the presenters and not with just the host. If you'd like, you can also unmute your line to ask a question for everyone, but just please keep in mind to continue to mute your line once you've asked your question, so we avoid any unnecessary hold music, dogs barking, or any other distractions that would take away from this presentation today. Because there's a large number of attendees on today's call, we may not get to each and every question, but please know that email and phone assistance is available following today's webinar, and we'll definitely be providing our contact information shortly. You can also expect a little chaos. We're going to be working between 2 different cities and all of you on a webinar, and this isn't even our webinar environment that we normally use. We're kind of taking over Tableau Public's WebEx account for the day, so there's some slight differences between ours and theirs, as well as we're going to be opening up about 4 or 5 different programs. So things might not always go super smooth, but we'll do our best to mitigate those when possible. A little bit about the data dissemination program at the United States Census Bureau. Gerson and I are just 2 folks in the data dissemination branch of the Customer Liaison and Marketing Services Office at the U.S. Census Bureau. But there are a number of us working in the field, and if you're calling from the United States today, there is a data dissemination specialist that is assigned to work in your area. So to get in touch with that person, you can always email us, and we'll provide our contact information at the conclusion of today's webinar, and then it'll also be provided within the chat. But you can also email census.askdata@census.gov, or you can even call the toll-free number at 1-844-ASK-DATA. So from there, I'm going to introduce my colleague, Gerson Vasquez from Atlanta, to take over the next portion of today's webinar.
Hello, everybody, and hopefully you can hear me fine. If I could just get a few people chiming in on chat to say that they hear me or hello would be great. Awesome. Thank you very much. Nice and interactive today. That's how we like it. Again, my name is Gerson Vasquez. I'm also a data dissemination specialist with the United States Census Bureau. And we've got a pretty abbreviated session today from what we're usually accustomed to. So we're going to try to squeeze a lot in, so bear with us. We're going to give you a quick overview. We're very excited about Tableau 10.2 because of the fact that we have spatial file formats and the ability to include census shapefiles, and we'll go over kind of a Census Geography 101, is a really big deal to us. I remember when we first found this out, we were both very excited because it just opens up so many opportunities, and hopefully after today's webinar you can see some of those opportunities and start coming up with your own great ways to visualize data in a spatial way. Downloading and prepping data using American FactFinder. American FactFinder is a tool that we will highlight today. Not the only way to get a lot of census data at once, but it's a pretty straightforward once you start to play with it, and it gives you the ability to pull not only different characteristics from something like the American Community Survey or the decennial data set from the 10-year census, but it also gives you the opportunity to pull the spatial files in kind of a logical manner. And so we'll go over those live scenarios with decennial data, ACS or American Community Survey, and we may even be able to touch on some talk about multiple data sets and how you pull that into Tableau for visualizations. And we'll try to go over this all very quickly, and we'd also like to interface with you as far as evaluations go, as we're always trying to improve our product as data dissemination branch and how we present data to you, so your feedback would be welcome. You can go to the next slide. And so, again, Tableau 10.2, previous versions, you know, we've been dealing with this, I think, since 7 or Tableau version 7. I can't remember, Ryan, when we first started kind of dipping our hands into this excellent platform. But the latest update, again, gives us that ability to work with spatial files. In Census World, a lot of that translates to a .shp or shapefile, and you'll see that later on today in the live demo. And that update to 10.2, we strongly encourage it if you haven't already. I'm assuming that if you're on this call, this WebEx today, you probably already updated, and you can do so there at the public tableau.com, and it's a free download, of course. We'll be operating off desktop today, but as you well know, that's something that's very parallel to what happens in the public version. So Census Geography, this is kind of a real quick hierarchical structure of how we do geography for the United States Census Bureau. That center line is what we'll be really on today, and specifically the ability to bring in shape files. And you might notice if you're checking out the chat, by the way, that Ryan, my esteemed colleague, is going to be dropping in some informational resources. And we'll be doing that throughout today, and we can even follow up with you afterwards. So you can go beyond just this kind of diagram and into some more nuts and bolts of what makes up the geos and geography in Census. But Census tracts, there are shape files for that. There are shape files for pretty much everything listed on this page. And that's going to give us the ability to plug and play quite nicely in Tableau. We're not going to go further into Census tracts today, but they're going to be a very useful geography. And if you need to find out more about Census tracts, we'll post a link. But just top-line information, they range between 4,000 and 8,000 people, and they can change over time, and we can definitely provide more info on that.
And do you also want to talk about the different data sets that are available, too?
Sure, great. Thanks, Ryan. Basically, there's going to be a variety of information available at all these geographic levels that you're looking at on your screen. There are going to be some thresholds, though, in many cases that need to be met, particularly with the data set we'll be looking at today, the American Community Survey. We're looking at census geographies of 65,000 or more that get the one-year estimates from the ACS, from that American Community Survey. Whereas smaller geographic levels, i.e. census tracts, block groups, in many cases zip code tabulation areas, and so on and so forth, they're really going to rely on the 5-year estimates of the ACS, of the American Community Survey. And that's just something that you have to build the right amount of sample size to create data that's credible and not so volatile at those smaller geographic levels. So that's something that you know, a lot of people have to get accustomed to, that there is some limitations when dealing with geographies when you're looking at 1 year versus 5 year. The way we like to put it, quite frankly, especially with the American Community Survey, is that you're going to 5 years is going to give you the most flexibility as far as geographies and the most comparability, because all geographies represented in the American Community Survey are going to get that 5-year estimate. So American FactFinder will be the star of our show today. We're going to basically jump to it in just a moment. It's a system that definitely we're constantly trying to improve. You'll see that there's a feedback button when you go to a live page on the top right, and we always welcome feedback. That's actually how a lot of improvements have been made. There's different ways to search on American FactFinder, which Ryan's going to kind of scroll through as we start the live version of this presentation, and there's definitely a lot of informational links, a lot of places you can jump to get more info, and we'll be manning that and sharing some of that also within the chat window for you guys to take note of. And again, we can always follow up afterwards if we don't get to it in the chat window. Some of the data that we're going to be looking at today, this is not all the data that's available. Actually, in a few moments, we'll put a link in chat to more data available in American FactFinder, but some of it that we're highlighting today, I've already mentioned the American Community Survey. There's the decennial census, that census that happens every 10 years that pretty much everybody knows about, dating back to 1790, the first census. And then economic census, which is actually a census of businesses or firms, as we call them, that employ people, happens every year ending in 2 and 7. So this is actually 2017 is an economic census year, and there's a lot of interesting information that comes out of that census. We won't be featuring that data set today, nor the population estimates program in any detail, but that's something you can definitely follow up with us on. And just to talk about population estimates program, it is the official population estimates federally recognized for an area, especially becomes important in intercensal years. And again, there's our contact information, but at this point, we're going to turn it back over to Ryan, and we're going to put this contact information up at the end of the presentation so that you don't have to rush to scribble it right now. We can also make these slides available. We will make these slides available so that you can have them for reference. But now we're going to jump over in our time today and look at some live examples of pulling data from American FactFinder.
Thank you very much, Gerson. And just a reminder to everybody on the call today, I am running with 2 or 3 screens at my desk, but when I'm going to be presenting now, if you have a question, please make sure you direct it to all panelists, as I won't be able to get to questions while I'm doing my presentation, and Gerson will chime in with any questions that I may need to cover for you. So I'm going to quickly pull up American FactFinder, and you have received a link to American FactFinder in the chat. I'm going to try to slide over. There we go. So this is American FactFinder. Can I just verify that everybody can see my screen?
I can see you.
Sounds good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. So yes, and again, if you have any questions, make sure you direct those questions to all panelists and not just the host, because I have seen some come in just to me and I won't be able to get to those at this moment. So if you can repeat that question, and then Gerson will be able to cover that for you. So American FactFinder, as Gerson described, is the primary data access tool of the United States Census Bureau. I actually think it's the best place to get data, ranging from the decennial census, which has some of that basic demographic information that we collect every 10 years, to the American Community Survey, which has some of that key socioeconomic and demographic information, ranging from the number of rooms in a home to how people commute to and from work, to educational attainment, income, poverty status, and employment status. So that's where we're going to get all that key information from that. And those are going to be the 2 we focus on today, but if you'd like more information on what's covered within the American Community Survey, you can also look through on this homepage of American FactFinder, and you'll see the exhaustive list of data that are available within this tool. What's really nice about American FactFinder is that, in prior versions, it was really kind of geared to be a heavy data users tool, and it really kind of was limiting for folks that maybe not have as much experience working with some of these estimates and censuses. So we have introduced some of these overlays like the guided search and the community facts portion, and I'll just quickly briefly show you what these are, but we won't be going into too much detail with with these because they're very simple and self-explanatory. So the Community Facts tab here will allow you to search by state, county, city, town, or zip code and get basic information and then eventually drill down even further. So if you were to simply type in a zip code, I'll just take a generic Washington, D.C. zip code, you will get some of these basic top-line numbers and be able to click through any one of these tabs and look through that further. And then you can also subsequently drill down with these links and pull out maybe a data table and then eventually the shapefile and visualize that into Tableau Public. The guided search is also a really kind of entry-level way into American FactFinder. You can use this by having American FactFinder ask you a series of questions, as you can see on the screen here, and as you go through that, you'll eventually lead to the table, hopefully lead to the table, I should say, in which that you are looking for. So that's just one more quick kind of novice way to get into this. But we're going to really be focusing today's presentation on advanced search because all of us on today's webinar are advanced. So if you want to, I'm going to go ahead and click there with advanced. And one of the examples I think would be kind of fun to look at is we're going to pick the state of Massachusetts. I didn't want to pick Georgia. I don't want to pick Minnesota because then they'd be playing favorites with each of our states too much here. But American FactFinder is actually, a lot of people tend to be a little bit apprehensive with using it, but really all it is really a search engine of the tens of thousands of tables that we've pre-tabulated and created. And all American FactFinder is doing, as you can see on the layout here, is once you input items into the selections box, it's looking for each time those specific terms intersect the table. And those specific terms could be variables like demographic estimates, socioeconomic estimate characteristics, or table ID numbers, or even geographies. So every time any one of those factors or variables intersect exactly within a table or match exactly within a table, you will then get search results. So and to navigate American FactFinder, if you know exactly what you're looking for, so let's just say you're interested in education, you could just simply type in education and click go. And then you will, right away from the start, you will get estimates from the United States for tables that all intersect education. Since I have not put any geography in there, it'll default to the largest geography that's currently available, which would be the United States. These starred items here will be the most popular data items that people have searched for when selecting that specific variable, and then followed by a ranking by most recently released estimates in order by table number. You can also input geography in the predictive text field over here under column 1. So if you wanted to type in a state, you can type in Massachusetts, and then also click go, and then that will also, you'll see, fly into your selections box. And again, you will see these estimates. You'll notice that we have the 5-year estimate that Gerson was talking about before. What that is that's going to take for the entire state of Massachusetts and tabulate 5 years worth of data into one single data pool to create an estimate. And that's data that will be comparable all the way down to the census tract level. But since Massachusetts is obviously over 65,000 people, we can also get data from that same table in the American Community Survey 1-year estimate and compare that to, say, other large geographies like maybe the city of Boston, the United States of America, or another state. So that's one way to kind of keep those two data pools kind of side by side, and understanding that you need to come down to that smallest geographic level to have that comparability amongst other data sets. One thing I also want to show you is that if you don't really know the specific terms, and even if you think you may know the specific term, I would always recommend using the topics, or sorry, the 5 filters on the left-hand side here. And that is a really great way to get started with American FactFinder. I say this because a lot of people won't know the specific, because the way FactFinder works is it's looking for exact matches. So there's no tags currently in American FactFinder, so if you were to look for jobs, it's going to look for that 4-letter word JOBS instead of employment status. So if you don't know that key variable term, you may end up with a table that really doesn't represent exactly what you're looking for. So for example, if I were to click topics here, and I was looking at, let's just say I wanted to, again, stick with education, I wanted to find educational attainment, was what I really want to find out, but you might be thinking, I want high school graduation rates. Well, you're not going to really see that specific search terms here, so this would also allow you to take a look at some of the key characteristics that are available within American FactFinder and then find that specific term to increase your results or your success rate. So you can click on educational attainment, and then once you click on that hyperlink, you'll notice that educational attainment has slid into the selections box. We also want to, just to get some really neat visualizations in Tableau Public, we want to maybe look at all census tracts in the state of Wisconsin. So you could start by typing in Massachusetts, but you really can't get down to that summary geographic level if you want to have like the summary of all census tracts in the state of Massachusetts, sorry. So you probably want to use maybe this geographies filter. And there's many ways to go about the geographies filter. And I know I'm probably going a little fast, and I assume that Tableau Public will be providing the recording for this, but please get in touch with the host and presenter or all panelists when you're communicating via chat if you have any questions or would like me to go back and repeat something. And Gerson, feel free to chime in as well. So you have these ways to search for geography in this geographic overlay for searching. You can drill down by this drop-down screen, which is kind of the more traditional way of looking through data. And this has kind of the most represented geographic levels, or the most commonly searched for geographic levels, and you'll see census tract. You can select census tract, and then you can select any state. So if you're looking for that kind of higher level summary of all, what's nice about this drop-down is that that third click will give you all census tracts within within Massachusetts. You can also drill down by county and get all census tract by county right through here as well. So, but if I just wanted all census tracts in Wisconsin, I could simply click there and add that to my selections box. I know a lot of people actually like to navigate American FactFinder with that drop-down button. I personally don't, and you can notice when I'm going back up to the selections box, I can remove anything on a line item by clicking the X next to it. And I can also clear all selections and start again. What I could also use is this name tab. And I personally prefer this myself because it operates much like that initial layer of American FactFinder in which you have sort of a filter which mimics like a selections box. So what I could do is I could start here by selecting a state, either from this drop-down menu and adding that to my filter. You'll notice that that state will fly all the way over into my selections box if that happens to appear there. Or I can type in the highest level of geography that I'd like to work with. So let's just say in this case, I still want to work with Massachusetts. I can select Massachusetts and then select Go. And then you notice my filter is going to populate with the state of Massachusetts. And then it's going to rank in order from that geographic hierarchy table that you saw before and by size, alphabetically. So you're going to get counties, metropolitan areas, and then places. So you're going to kind of see a broad list of all of geographies, all 5,514 geographic levels in the state of Massachusetts. But if I just wanted the census tracts, I typed in Massachusetts, and then I can select census tract from that filter. And then you will see that that third selection down is, again, similar to that drop-down. I know this may seem a little bit more challenging or more steps to get here, but if you're using American FactFinder a lot, actually this is going to provide you the broadest range of topics and ability to look through multiple levels of geography more than that drop-down level. Because that drop-down, if you wanted to say select 2 or 3 different geographic levels, you need to control click, and sometimes those lists can get very long. So I always like to kind of push people to this name tab within geography to have the best results. So just by clicking on that hyperlink, I was able to populate that table the same way I was before. So let's look at a table and just kind of, again, overview of these of your search results. So again, there are 205 times in which educational attainment in all census tracts within Massachusetts intersect a specific table, one of those tens of thousands of tables we have on American FactFinder. You can filter this down by a number of ways. You can filter this down by the most recent estimates. You can look at the 2015 estimates only, which will bring you down to just 26 tables. And then you can say, I only want to look at specific program. So if I had, so in this case, the only data that I have for educational attainment is American Community Survey data. But let's just say I was using a more generic term like age or sex. I would probably have estimates available here from the decennial census. So it would allow me to filter this down by a program that had maybe, a census program that contained that data set from multiple programs. So all of these items here are from the American Community Survey, and all of them are 5-year estimates because census tracts in 0 cases are over 65,000 people. So we would have to look at 5 years of combined tabulated data. From there, I'll click on educational attainment. And then what you're going to see here is a massive table with 17,736 rows of data, or columns of data, and then 64 rows of data. And for all of you that are using Tableau Public, you'll understand that sometimes, you know, especially if you're using maybe a computer with only 8 gigabytes of RAM or 4 gigabytes of RAM even, working with that many rows or that many columns of data can get really challenging. So it's really important when you're working with some large census data tables like this is to do an effective job in cleaning up your data. So now that we've gotten to this table, and I will kind of use that Julia Child baked the cake example in terms of, you know, the ultimate clean version of the table, but I want to show you some of the really neat tools that are available within American FactFinder on the table before you even get it into a spreadsheet program like Excel. So you could look at previous versions of the table. Say you wanted to have time series visualization of census data. Now this is 5-year data, so the data nerd in me would tell you you probably don't want to look at the previous 4 versions of this. So since this table here is going to be 2011 to 2015 5-year estimates, well, what you could do if you wanted to look at a comparability by census tract of educational attainment, you might want to just pull the 2015 and the 2010 and pull those tables together if you want to do some sort of time series comparison on educational attainment by census tract in the state of Massachusetts. So that's just one tip that I can kind of show you there, that if a previous vintage of that table is available, it will be available on the left-hand side of the screen, as you see here. You can also modify the table. And this modify table thing, I wasn't really into this when I first started working with American FactFinder, but I actually have grown to like it a lot more, especially if I get the chance to show you the decennial example. I like transposing rows and columns in this version much more than doing it, especially when you have lopsided tables. Sometimes you'll have 3 rows and 17,000 columns. Well, it's much better to look at the 3 columns and 17,000 rows, especially if you're doing sorting and ranking and that sort of thing. But you can transpose the rows and columns by clicking on that Modify Table button. See how easy that is there. The other thing, too, is let's just say in this case, you can look at Barnstable County, Tract 101 in Massachusetts. Let's just say I really only wanted to look at, let's just think of a good example here. I just wanted to look at the percent. So this column here, these 2 columns here, the percent and the margin of error, I really don't need the estimate for the number of people because census tract is not a geography that really compare physical population numbers. We really more look at percentages. So if I really just wanted to look at the percent for both sexes and I wasn't concerned with the breakdown in sex, I could click on this filter here. Sorry, wrong one. That's also an important one. And what I can do is only look at this second series of columns, which would be percent, and then you have the estimates, and then the percent males, and then the estimate, and then the percent females. So that's going to really greatly reduce this file size that I may import to Tableau Public all the way from 17,000 columns to 2956. So we've already reduced the data load, that extraction time that it may take to bring in that data into Tableau. And again, I don't ever recommend this, and I specifically don't recommend this at the census tract level, but if you were, say, working with large geographies and you only wanted to work with the estimate and weren't concerned with the margin of error, you weren't planning on building that in, you can always remove the margin of error by checking only in the estimate. So these are the ones that I would like to see, and that's the ones that I would check in. But I'm going to keep them there because I really shouldn't show you a census tract table without the MOE in there. And again, you can do the same thing with the columns with the rows, if I'm only looking at the percent that has a high school graduate, population 25 and older with a high school diploma and say maybe a bachelor's degree, these are the only two key variables that I want. So I'm only going to look at that, and I can go through one by one and greatly, again, reduce the size of my table and do a whole lot of data prep without even downloading yet. And I can even, if I'm not concerned with the breakdown array, so there's quite a lot you can do here, and it happens very quickly. But as we know with Excel, you can remove rows and columns, you know, maybe even more efficiently than this. But when you get into the filtering of the columns, I think this is a very helpful tool. And again, if you wanted to show the hidden rows and columns or reset the table, there's an easy ability to do that here as well. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to hide that table. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the download options from Excel, or the download options from American FactFinder. So what happens here is, and I say this a lot, is that a lot of people, in my experience with working with American FactFinder, their eyes are immediately drawn, even though our defaults are selected to their CSV files, their eyes are immediately drawn to Excel. Maybe this audience is a little different, but a lot of people are still apprehensive in working with text files or CSV files or comma-separated values. When working with Census Bureau data, I highly recommend that you almost never download into an Excel file unless you're wanting to simply print it really quickly. And I say this because when you download directly into Excel from American FactFinder, you're going to get a lot of those hidden rows and columns that will, the data won't be there necessarily, but there'll be a lot of extra rows, extra columns. So if you wanted to, say, merge two files together, it would be really difficult for you. And I'm actually quite convinced that in Tableau, when you have all of those extra header rows and all of those extra columns that aren't there, it will create some confusion, even with the data interpreter turned on within Tableau. So just take the default, download it into a CSV. Newer versions of Excel actually open up CSVs now natively. You don't have to do the import function anymore. You'll notice in just a moment what that file will look like. I think I need to exit full screen mode here. And I'm just going to briefly walk through some quick, did I lose my table? Oh, there it is. So you can look at the table here that we've modified a little bit on AFS, or American FactFinder, and you will see that as I highlight all of these rows, you'll see that, sorry, I only have, apologies. There we go. That I only have the percent estimate high school graduate or higher for these counties. So that did work out really nicely for me, and I was able to, and then you can see the age breakdowns here. So really, all I'm really concerned with are these first two tables of data. So I got the percent estimate high school graduate or higher, percent margin of error, high school graduate or higher, and this is for both sexes. Remember, I didn't do that breakdown by sex. And then I got the percent estimate bachelor's degree or higher, and the percent estimate margin of error for bachelor's degree or higher. For everything else here, I could just simply, for ease of data prep, I could get rid of all of those other columns by sliding over and then deleting. So this is kind of a nice, easy way to get Census Bureau data ready for Tableau. You can leave that first header row, but since we're here, it might make things easier when we're working with Tableau Public later on, just to prep that data a little bit better to have a singular header row. And then what you'll notice here, and this is going to be key later when we get into pulling the shapefile in, is that we have these two IDs here. So we have the geographic ID and then a secondary ID, which are just kind of one's a shorter version of the other, and different programs we have use different versions of that FIPS code. And Gerson, I think, already sent, or I sent previously in the chat, what our geographic identifiers are, so I encourage you to take a look at that a little bit more closely. And then this third column of data here will have Census Geography kind of spelled out. So none of us really know, so it's really important to kind of keep this field intact because especially in your tooltip or when we do the mapping, nobody really knows where their census tract is or what their census tract is or what the number is. So having all of this information nicely spelled out will be very helpful and make your visualization a little bit more impactful. So we've done that and we've modified this table really nicely. I'm just going to go ahead and save it. And then we're going to get on to some more fun stuff here. I'm going to save this as and I'll save that in the Tableau webinar file. And then some people like to save also as an Excel document, so we can go ahead and say this is an Excel workbook. And I'm sorry if I'm going too fast. I'm going to actually do this example really quickly one more time too, before we get into integrating within Tableau. I think I minimized too quickly here. So again, back to Tableau here, or sorry, back to American FactFinder. So now you see I have I've finished modifying the table. I've downloaded the table. So what I need to do now, if you want to pull that shapefile, so we have the ability to get maps all the way from Tiger, which is a geographic program, and Gerson touched on it earlier. But we can also get the shapefile directly from this, from American FactFinder. And I'm going to do that by first creating a map. And it really doesn't matter where you click on this specific one, but if you had a table, let's just say with multiple geography series, like if you had several counties and several tracts, you're going to want to create the map for the geographic series that you want to eventually visualize. So the limitation with American FactFinder is that you can only map one specific geography, and you can only map one specific variable. That won't really matter for us because we're not going to be really focusing on the Census Bureau mapping product too much, but for pulling your data from American FactFinder, you do need to create a map in order to produce a shapefile. So I got to that again by just clicking on Create a Map, and once you click on Create a Map, as long as you're not in this modified table environment, you notice you can't create a map from this environment. But if you click on Create a Map, you can then go through here and click on any one of these estimates for any one of these census tracts, and it's going to actually pull every single corresponding census tract in your table here. So I can go ahead and just click on this first one, and I'm going to create a map of educational attainment by high school for those 25 and older for the entire state of Massachusetts. And I encourage you, if you get some time, to take a look at this mapping tool, because it is kind of fun, especially if you want to just produce a quick one variable visualization. There's a lot of interesting ways to change your view, to change the data classes. So it's a quick and easy way to do some visualization. Obviously not as powerful as Tableau, but if you wanted to take a look at some of these characteristics here, like changing the data classes, the opacity, even how you define the breaks. So there's a lot of really neat ways to do that visualization. There's even some neat base layers with the map. So if you wanted to change how the map looks, you can do that as well. I just got the 9-minute warning. Thanks, Gerson. I will speed up. So that's one of the things you can do within the mapping here. We're going to jump right over here to the download, because once you've created a map, and currently this is the only way to get the shapefile directly linked to the data that you've downloaded. So you would actually go to the download button within the mapping and click on shapefiles. And that's where you'll pull that shapefile from American FactFinder. I know it's a lot to try to cram in 30, 45 minutes here. We're doing our best. So you'll see here, once I've done that, you will see my track thematic shape files will pull up right in here, and then I have that ability to now import this into Tableau. So I did create another kind of bake the cake example using decennial data, so I'm going to try to now quickly show you how to import some of this into Tableau Public. Hopefully Gerson's been able to answer most of your questions. Just to keep in mind, if you've been asking questions to just the host, I've not been able to see them. So if you have had a question that's gone unanswered, please certainly chat with both the host and the presenter or just all panelists. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open up Tableau, and we're going to take a look at some of that data that we've been able to pull in. So I'm going to start in Tableau. I'm going to click on spatial file, because that's the file that I want to now pull in, and that's one of the new features of Tableau 10.2. I'm going to go in here to the Tableau webinar on my desktop. You'll see mass tracks shape. And there'll only be one file that's available, and that's 14,000.shp, so that's a spatial file, primarily used in a lot of programs like ArcGIS and Esri, and now Tableau since about February, which is really exciting. And that'll take a moment to extract the query, execute the query. And then what I'm going to do is, from here, kind of important to see this, because what you're going to see is what that GeoID looks like, because that's going to be kind of that primary key for those of you that have worked with Access in the past. That's going to be the kind of that primary key to do that union with the number of files that we have. So you remember that this file that we've pulled on here, you can see that the naming convention that the shapefiles have used was the US naming convention within that geographic ID. I'm going to want to then go here into click Add. I'm going to click on an Excel, and I'm going to pull that same file that I worked with before, that math AFF track education. I've already kind of modified that a little bit. It's also pretty easy, and as all of you know, you'd probably be better off changing some of those header road names, something that'd be a little bit more or less Census Bureau wonkish. So that's something to do as well, to think about as you're doing that. So you're going to see here, as those of you may know, so I showed you that file before, so that was GeoID and ID were my union matches. So those of you who have not done a lot of work with unions, you just want to make sure that that primary key matches both files to create that union. So from the 14,000 shape file, I'm going to be pulling in GeoID, and from the mass AFF tracks education file, I'm going to be pulling in ID. And once I do that, I've successfully linked up that table. So let's just say I have this decennial table that I want to also pull into this visualization. I can go through here and even add another data file. I can go into Excel and click on, I pulled a median age file for all census tracts in Massachusetts a few months ago. I can go ahead and merge this in too and create a double union with multiple Census Bureau data sets. You can do a visualization. Say you wanted to do a dot map, maybe size on color, and you can maybe do like median age on color, and the size you could do educational attainment or something like that. So you can kind of map two variables at once, which would be kind of fun to do. So again, what you're going to need to do here is create a union over here to make sure that this decennial table will link up. So all I need to do is make sure that GeoID in the 14,000 shape file matches ID, and then what it'll do is it'll take the spreadsheet name and put that in parenthetical to create that full table that I want to work with. I'm going to then want to go into sheet 1 and just do a quick, easy visualization for you. Those of you who haven't done a lot of work with shape files, it's really simple. In the past, it was super challenging, I should say, for those of us that wanted to visualize census data at that, smaller sub-county geographic level like a tract. But right now, it just really is as simple as pulling that shape file in and double-clicking geometry. And that's gone through and pulled every single shape from the Census Bureau's shape file. From there, I'm just going to want to go ahead and minimize that shape file. And then if you remember geography, I'm just going to want to go ahead and pull that in on detail. So I get all of that information by each census tract. If I want to just say I wanted to quickly do a map of, let's just do bachelor's degree, I can go ahead and pull into color the bachelor's degrees, and you can create a thematic map by bachelor's degree. And then maybe from that other table, I wanted to pull in the median age for both sexes. I can maybe put that in on the tooltip. So really quickly, I've got, the color is going to be directing the percent with a bachelor's degree or higher, and then, you can obviously play around with the tooltip and how this looks, and we've had a lot of examples. You can even show a filter for any one of these variables. So I can go up here to, quickly just click here and write show filter. You'll have a nice little filter where you can do some quick analysis of that specific variable. So with that, I'll kind of close and let Gerson chime in to see if there are any questions. We wanted to just kind of quickly show you, we are so excited about being able to do a lot of this work in shapefiles. Gerson and I actually a week and a half ago, we're in DC where the two of us were a team and we won the Census Bureau's annual Visathon. So that was really exciting for us, and a really big reason for that was the ability to pull shape files at the sub-geographic level. So we created a national shapefile kind of exciting application using Tableau. So obviously we're kind of been geeking out about this since about the end of February. So if there are any questions, please certainly ask away. And Gerson, chime in if there's anything you'd like me to recover.
You did a great job, Ryan, and just to echo what you said, I mean, we're very excited about this platform, and we've ambitiously been going after our own projects, including, mapping out every census tract in the nation, and you're talking about 73,000 plus census tracts in the nation. So that's something that I can't say enough about the Tableau public community, and sometimes Ryan and I will just kind of search things that have been done around census data and other data for that matter, just to kind of get a idea of some of the creativity going on. And you learn a lot just by looking at other people's works and visualizations, especially people who have had a lot of experience on this platform. And if you haven't already, that's a good way to kind of start your own brainstorming session, is just looking at what's out there on Tableau Public.
Yeah, but I can show you quickly what we've done and some best practices when doing some of the visualizations. And obviously this is a very primitive example. It's just a worksheet because it really is exactly what I just covered in that example just a moment ago. But what you can do here is you can see when I have the tooltips, obviously we're really big on displaying the margin of error because it's important, especially when you get to these very, very small geographic levels. So you can see that there's a 4-point difference, but that 4-point difference would really even change the color, or that 4-point difference could really pull one census tract within a county all the way from first to maybe last if you were to rank it by that specific variable. So we really encourage you to kind of take some of these examples that we have and when you're working with data, and always really maybe think twice, look at that, make sure you're doing that eyeball test with the margin of error. Source the data like I have here if you'd like to, or find another way, maybe a little bit more visually appealing way to do it. But it's really important, especially when you're working with estimates at the small geographic levels like this, to include the margin of error. You can see this one census tract here, the estimate's 42.4% with a margin of error of 8.5. You will find in some tables at the tract level, there will be estimates of, let's just say, 46 people, and you might have a margin of error of 99. So it's important, again, like I said, I can't stress, to take a look at some of that, but have fun with it, because we're really excited to be able to, open up Census Bureau data. Not that it wasn't open before, but to really do this in a much more efficient and easy to do way. I mean, we were able to, in 45 minutes, explain American FactFinder hopefully to you pretty well, and then bring you all the way into pulling that data from American FactFinder along with the shapefile and creating interactive visualizations and eventually, hopefully, dashboards.
And Ryan, we have a question on how do you pull in the margin of error into the description.
Sure.
If you can kind of walk through that. And we understand that this webinar was supposed to go from 12 to 12:45, so we're a little over right now, but we're happy to hang out for a few minutes while Tableau Public will allow us and go over some of these questions. And if we can't get to everything again, we can certainly follow up. Back to Ryan.
Sure. So as you can see here, let me just reset this filter quick. So I have my variables on the left-hand side here. So you see I don't have a margin of error for median age with both sexes because that was the decennial census and we're perfect then. No, I'm kidding. But that's a 100% count of the population. So statistically, there would not be a margin of error per se. But with any estimate, so that would include the American Community Survey, which is a sample. As if those of you are working with presidential polls or something like that, you'll see in a margin of error based on the number of respondents to the to the representative sample. But easily, the way to pull in the margin of error would be just to pull it into Tooltip. So what I would have here is I have the % bachelor's degree. I would pull in the margin of error right into Tooltip. And then what you'll see when I hover over here, and then what I can do, this is a very good question because all I can do is take, maybe I want just the number. So I can just hit a parentheses here and a parentheses there. And then, because not a lot of people I think know that you can really easily edit that tooltip. So we have the estimate percentage. And what I could do is just MOE, and then right after that colon or colon that I put in there, I could just do a plus over minus. And then what you'll see is my tooltip has now changed. So you can really do anything you want with those tooltips. There's a lot of ways to, make them look a little bit better. Sometimes you don't need all of this information. So you can just do median age. If you want the percentage, you can obviously reformat the number. You can just put the % sign in after here if you want to just be quicker about it. So you'll see there's a lot of ways to make that look a little bit better and be more statistically sound. Hopefully that answers your question. Any other questions, Gerson?
Thank you for that example, Ryan. You got a thanks, and a lot of good interactions over here on the chat. So it looks like
I see that.
I assume we're doing a great job because the questions seem to be getting answered. I've sent a lot of informational links out, as have you, Ryan. I know that means that people have to click and read up on some things. And if you have any questions after that, our contact information, if you want to put that back on the screen, Ryan, and that way they can note that going forward, and of course we'll make it available as well.
Cool. And I also just sent the evaluation link into the chat for everybody. We're the Census Bureau. Of course, you can't get away from us without asking you to fill out a survey. So please do that. And we'll be in touch with Tableau Public on how to disseminate that recording of today's webinar to you. I saw that was a couple of people had asked that. We're not exactly sure how they handle that because we're kind of taking over their account for the day. But please feel free to contact us. I'm going to leave the contact information on the screen. Gerson also put our email addresses on there, but feel free to pick up the phone and call us. What we do is free. We're always here. Well, we're not always here, but we're always willing to help, that's for sure. And if you have any follow-up beyond today's webinar, we'll be around for the rest of the day, but we're always going to be here as well, too. So do be in touch with us as soon as possible if you need to. And also, don't forget to, if you'd like to have somebody come in and do some in-person just American FactFinder training or workshops on any one of our Census Bureau data products, we can have somebody that represents your area get in touch with you as well. So if you were to email us or the generic email account on the screen there, you can get some more advanced training on using some of our Census Bureau products and services. But it's been fun. It's kind of hard to do a webinar like this and not see everybody's face and, or actually have the questions come in with voice, but I hope everybody enjoyed themselves today. I absolutely love working on this stuff right now, so thank you for your time today.
Yeah, and it's a pleasure on my end as well. And just remember, this is just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, there's a lot of data that we have, especially at those lower geographic areas, but rank, state, county, nation as well. So, whenever you run into issues on American FactFinder, please reach out. Now that you know me and Ryan by name, we're happy to help. If we are not available, we can get you to one of our colleagues that, like Ryan said, can even locally come out and go more in depth with you, because there is a world of data that Census offers. And then, of course, with the capabilities of Tableau and Tableau Public, bringing that data over, I mean, it's really exciting, and we're really geeking out about it because that's the type of data nerds that we are. And as far as other FactFinder webinar trainings, I'm about to post a link to our Census training page as well. And we'll be coordinating efforts with Tableau Public and Tableau to see about future sessions that we do on different topics. But for now, I'll post that link for our training site within the Census Bureau, where we do consistently have trainings on all our data tools, including FactFinder.
Well, thank you very much for attending today's webinar.